Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of this A-level series, where I'll be talking about the general study tips that I have to share. Over here you'll see a summary of the things that I'll be talking about. As per usual, I'll leave timestamps in the description down below, so if you want to skip to any part, just feel free to skip to it. Well, let's just get started. My first tip for you is to keep your notes organized, whether it's through the use of binders or even ring files. It's very useful to keep your notes organized so that if you have to find any documents, it will make the process much easier. I like to buy the thick ones so that I don't have to worry about running out of space because I personally don't like using multiple files for a subject. I divide my file into 3 sections. First is for my subject notes. Secondly is my practice papers. And lastly is my test papers. But of course you can divide the file according to your needs. I just divide it this way so that it makes it easier for me to find the relevant stuff that I want. I personally don't go out of my way to buy dividers, and usually I'll just use paper and then fold it into half so that I can get a significant thickness for me to use it as a divider. I find this method very cheap and as well as efficient. My next tip is to use learning outcomes provided by the school. Usually the school handouts will come with learning outcomes attached for the subject, as you can see right here. This part where it says candidates should be able to and list down different objectives. It's very efficient for you to craft your notes based on learning outcomes, as you can cover all the grounds of learning, as well as use it to guide your learning, making sure that you are not missing out content that you should be studying about. You should test yourself using these learning outcomes to help you gauge your level of understanding of the subject. Another thing that I like to practice is to write down questions during lecture when I have things that I don't understand. So for example, you can see I have written a question right here with a circle mark. I also make it a practice for me to write down the page number at the front of the page, so that I will not forget to resolve them. I find that doing this keeps me active and engaged in the lecture, rather than just passively sitting down there and listen and acquiring new information. So whenever I have a question, I'll write it down somewhere and resolve it after the lecture is over or in class. I won't immediately try to resolve it because the lecture is still ongoing. So if I ponder too much about the question right now, I will miss out on key information that will come after that. So for example, I have this question right here. So after the lecture is over, I will usually discuss with my friends first, and if their method of explanation doesn't convince me, then I will seek my teacher for help. Once my doubt is clarified, then I will go to the front page and cancel out the page that I had doubt on. I will also leave the doubt there, as well as a solution, because from my personal experience, sometimes I find that these mental blocks may come back. So by leaving the question and the solution, at least I'll have something to refer to if I face this mental block again. If you face any difficulty understanding your content, you should try to resolve them as soon as possible. If not, they may eventually snowball and cause your foundations to be very shaky. You could always seek your friends for help or even seek out online forums about your subject and see if there are any relevant answers that can help to answer your doubts. If you need to, you can also find your teachers for help. I'm quite sure they will be very willing to guide you and answer your questions. For me, my teachers generally don't like me asking them questions via the phone, but they will always make time for me to seek consultation with them in real life. So if you need to, don't be shy and ask them for help, and I'm sure they will be very willing to help you out. There's also another option of seeking help from tutors outside of the school. From what I generally hear, tutors outside of the school are very good at their craft and de-escalating the content, making it easier for students to understand. So I would say if you are very weak in a subject, or A levels is going to start soon and you don't really have much time, then you can probably consider getting extra lessons outside of school so that the tutors can guide you and help you improve your understanding. My next tip for you is to make sure that you work on your weaker subject, no matter how much you kind of dislike it. Because at the end of the day, levels will grade you on all your subjects. For me, my weakest subject was definitely general paper, because my attitude and interest towards GP wasn't really the best. and I guess my results do show that kind of mentality. But the thing about A levels is that it's not really looking out for masters in a few subjects, but it's mainly looking out for people who are above average in all the subjects. So basically, it's kind of looking out for, I would say, an above average jack of all trades. So no matter how well you do in your other subjects, if you don't do well in the weakest one, it will overall pull down your entire score down. I mean, like what they always say, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So although I dedicated a lot of time to my sciences and math, I kind of neglected my GP by not putting in as much practice. And yeah, it really put down my grades overall for the A levels. So make sure you always put in conscientious effort in your weaker subject. Also, make sure that you are spending quality time studying. For content heavy subjects such as maybe geography, history, or even some specific sciences like biology and organic chemistry, I find that active recall and spaced repetition is the best way to go. It is a very efficient study technique that can help you keep your content fresh in your mind for an extended period of time. I have made a video on how I study like this, so if you want, you can check it out. Also, the quality of a study sessions is more important than the number of hours you put in to study. So when you engage in your study sessions, make sure you put away all your distractions so that you can focus on your studies. If you find it difficult to sit down for extended periods of time, maybe you could try out the Pomodoro technique. You can find more information online to help you pace your study so that you can keep a consistent effort in it. Most people that I know don't try to study for a crazy number of hours, but they will engage in very focused learning instead. This means that they will try their best to internalize the content or do problems, rather than just studying and then checking social media every 15 minutes or so. So try your best to study effectively so that you can leave some time to relax every day. So after you are done understanding the content, the next step is to apply the content, which means to solve problems. So work out questions or practice papers and test yourself to see if you can solve the questions. If you got it wrong, understand the root cause of it, whether it may be careless mistake or perhaps it's a conceptual issue. As for past year A-level papers, I find it best to do it when you are done to completing the subject syllabus. So maybe when you are 90 to 100% of the content done. This is so that you can properly use the opportunity to test yourself according to the A levels, rather than just simply waste it as a practice. My next tip for you is to study from important mistakes. Learning from mistakes is a very important process in your learning, since mistakes are the gaps in your understanding. So learning from it will help to fill those gaps. But generally, there are a few unimportant mistakes in a sense, but of course it depends on the scenario whether you should learn from it. One of these examples is carelessness, simply because carelessness is not something that you can really control. But the thing is, if you can understand the source of your carelessness as to why you were careless, then maybe it could be a mistake that's worth learning from since you can rectify the root cause of the issue. Another mistake that may not be so worth learning from is when you forget your content. This is because by right, you should already have a study method to help you study this piece of content and help you ingrain it into your mind. So if you study from your original source and then you study for the mistakes again, it's kind of like studying the same thing twice, which I find a waste of time, simply because you are studying from overlapping content. So perhaps you should understand why in the first place you forget your content. And perhaps you should try to revise your study method so that you can figure out why you even forget this piece of content in the first place. The more important ones to study from are exam question nuances. It's kind of hard for me to describe this, but basically it's those tricky kind of questions that are out of the norm and difficult to score. It's very useful for you to study this so that you know how to tackle similar situations in the future. Also, you should study from mistakes caused by conceptual errors so that you can rectify these conceptual misunderstandings. At the end of the day, it is up to your personal discretion. If you find that studying from these mistakes can boost your learning and understanding, then it is probably worth studying from it. That's all I have for my study tips video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you had some positive takeaways from my video. And if you do like it, please drop a like, subscribe, and yeah, all the best and see you.